Hello, and in this episode of the DownShift, we're getting close to racing returning to our screens, but we're now facing the largest regulation change since 2022. So we'll be looking at the regulation changes for 2026 and what this means for Formula One next year.
So it's lights out.
The clutch.
And let's get racing.
Hello and welcome to the Downshift as we are so close to racing returning to our screens as we prepare for the Dutch Grand Prix at Zandvoort. But before we do that, there's been some major changes coming into Formula One in 2026, which is the largest change since the reg changes in 2022 that saw the ground effect season. We're seeing a change to tyres, chassis, power units, and in an effort to make lower cost racing plus closer racing as well. The new regs aim to foster innovation, environmental responsibility, and thrilling competition to make the cars lighter and more agile. And there's talk that it will be 1 to 2 seconds faster per lap based on these changes, looking to enhance overtaking and safety. As we see Audi coming into the sport and Cadillac, it's to reduce the costs for manufacturers to attract them to the sport. So with that, we're going to jump into the details. Not trying to make it too technical. We'll try and keep it a little bit light. But for the water cooler conversation around the office, gives everyone something to talk about in regards to what's coming up.
We're going to wade into 2026 regulations, technical regulations from the FIA, and we're going to try not to make it too boring and dry.
We're going to keep it so Dan and I can still understand what we're talking about. So that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah. All right.
This is the dummies guide to 2026 F1 regs.
Well, hopefully we can cover it all succinctly, and everyone's going to know what to expect when they roll out cars for testing in February.
And of course, there's no dumb questions.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. But we give it a go.
You spoke pretty early on that one, Christian.
So to kick us off, why don't we throw to our technical expert, Dan?
Rightio. We get kicking off with me. Awesome. Tyres is what I'm talking about. They're staying with the 18-inch wheel size as they had since 2022. They're making the front tyres narrower by 25 mil, and the rear tyres narrower by 30 mil, resulting in approximately 5 kilograms less weight per tyre set with minimal grip loss, apparently. I also read that there's going to be some aerodynamic efficiency for the narrower tyres as well that'll come into play. So there'll be a bit going on there.
It probably would, but I was hoping that if the contact patch is smaller on the tyres, that they may not be as grippy, and the cars might be a bit more difficult to drive. So that's something we can hope for. Yeah,
it'll add for some excitement for the drivers trying to keep it on the track, and obviously a bit more driver skill to be able to manage the tyres. Pirelli has come out and said no change to the grip, but I see that as a bit of marketing fluff there. If you're going to get smaller tyres, grip is definitely going to be an issue.
What's Pirelli going to say? Oh, it's okay. It'd be like driving on marbles. It'd be great. Of course they're going to say the grip's not going to change. Like, come on.
Well, that's the thing. You've got Pirelli who are trying to sell tyres. They want their tyres to perform, but we all want people to be sliding the rears around when they're trying to get out of a corner. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
And Christian, I believe you're taking a look at the chassis changes.
Yes, essentially, the drivers are driving buses around the track at the moment. We're going to see a reduction in the size of the chassis. When I talk about the chassis, we're talking about from the center of the front wheel to the center of the rear wheel. So there's actually going to be a shortening of the car by 200 millimeters, so which will bring it down from 3,600 millimeters to 3,400 millimeters. So a shorter wheelbase, but then also narrower as well. So we're actually going to see the width of the car reducing by 100 millimeters, 10 centimeter reduction in regards to the width. That's going to be the physical change in regards to the size of the car. What that also adds is that the FIA have now reduced the minimum weight by 30 kilos. The car normally has to be 798 kilograms. It's now going to go down to 768 kilograms. Lighter, smaller, and more agile, which will allow the cars to hopefully go toe-to-toe a little bit more. And then also what we're seeing is a change to the downforce. For those who are have been with Formula One for a while. As we saw the 2022 regulation changes, this was the downforce effects, the Venturi effect, which actually creates a vacuum underneath the car, which helps it stick to the road. With these changes, the rear diffuser is actually being reduced, and therefore the floor is actually going to be flatter. So you're not going to have that downforce effect by the Venturi. And what that means is that the car will actually sit a little bit higher. So I think for Ferrari, they should be quite happy with that.
Will that cause the same porpoising effects that happened the last time they made these changes, where the cars were going down the straight, bouncing like a roller coaster as they went down?
It's designed to remove that because they don't need to run as low to make the downforce anymore.
I'll be interested to see whether this narrower width now allows the bit more side-by-side action on some tight tracks.
Yeah, that's the aim of it, that they can then get cars, especially Monaco and things like that. The hope is they'll have closer side-by-side racing on it.
Yeah, make them a bit more nimble anyway.
I'd argue that it's not going further enough. They're only minor changes, and you're seeing people talk about comparisons as to what the car reduction is. It's a minor reduction. It's obviously a good step in the right direction, but you're not going to get to the size of the cars going back to the 2000s or the 90s and 80s. So, but again, the hope is that they will be able to get closer.
I think that'd be a challenge. It's a good step, but I wouldn't. You can't expect them to do it like a wholesale change because, on one side they're trying to make the cars smaller, make them a bit more nimble, but on the other end, we'll talk about soon, they're also trying to increase safety, which can add weight and complication to the chassis and stuff. So it's a challenge for them, but yeah, at least they're heading in the right direction.
So as we see that direction changing, as we talked a little bit about the downforce, which has an aero effect, Happy, we've got a bunch of aerodynamic changes to the car as well.
Yeah. Thanks for lumping me with this one. This is the one that the commentators are going to find it. It's going to be difficult to explain this to a global audience because there are quite a few changes to the car aerodynamically. Lachlan will jump in and talk about some of the engine and power modes, which are related to the aero here. But anyway, the basic changes are there will be a slightly different front and rear wing. There'll be a few more wing elements. There'll be maybe slightly different aero elements on the side of the car just to manage the wake. Not quite as important. The important things are, like you said before with the chassis, the near removal of the diffuser at the rear of the car. So whereas there used to be like some real Venturi channels underneath the car to generate downforce to that rear diffuser, now most of the bottom of that car is going to be quite flat. So the aero is going to be generated through the wings. The downforce they're expecting to reduce by around about 30% compared to current cars, which is a big reduction. It'll be
huge.
It'll be interesting to see how quickly the teams get back to 2025 levels. Knowing Formula One, it won't take too long. But the main thing is, though, we're trying to also reduce drag. And so the FIA thinks they've reduced drag by around 55%, which is a massive number. So the cars are going to move through the air a lot more easily.
So
Now,
can I just jump in? So is that going to then help people like Bottas, Hamilton, and the drivers who've been around for a long time, because they would have driven the previous cars where they had less drag and less air efficiency from that one, whereas the newer models have obviously been stuck to the ground? Does that mean that Alonso and all that are going to go, well, this is what we used to drive, and have a slight advantage from that point?
maybe. I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see who does get to grips with it, in that if we're expecting lap times to be similar to current cars, but downforce and drag is reduced significantly, it means they're going to be slower through the corners and much faster down the straights. So if there's less downforce and they're trying to exit out of a medium or high speed corner, you've got danger of wheel spin. Like the car could be a bit of an animal to drive if you're deploying full power around the tracks. Hopefully it makes for a better driving experience for the drivers. That's what I'm hoping. And I'm sure they're hoping for that as well. So yeah, we'll
Hopefully
see.
they light the tyres up a bit more often as well and smoke through some of those.
Yeah, exactly.
And Happy, this is where we look to, I don't know if it's Gen Next, Gen Alpha, Gen Touch, whatever it is. It's almost like as we start to move into these modes, a gamification of Formula One.
Yeah, no, we've been talking for the past 12 months or so about removing artificial things and just making the racing naturally better. But what we seem to be moving towards 2026 with is more gadgets, more gizmos, more tech. So this is where it's going to be difficult for commentators like Crofty and so on to explain to people. But these cars, instead of having what we used to have, which was DRS down the straights, so if you were within 1 second, you could open up a flap on the rear wing, you would get some extra speed. There was no more extra power. It was just a reduction in drag. It's a bit more complicated next year. Next year, the cars will have 2 modes. You listening, Christian? You look.
I'm waiting for the explanation. This is going to be great.
Right. So whether or not they still use this terminology come race day, we'll see. But Z mode and X mode. So Z mode is, I guess, the standard mode of the car with the wings in their normal position to generate downforce. So that's the car driving around corners, maximum grip. However, when the cars get to a straight, they will be able to activate X mode. And that's a driver activated mode. And it's a bit like DRS, but it goes one step further in that instead of just opening up the rear wing, it actually opens up the elements on the front wing as well. So it keeps the car balance pretty similar, but it gives the car much more speed down the straight. Now, this can be enabled on every straight section of track. It's enabled by the driver. Every car can do it at any position around the lap. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to be within a second of someone else. There is something similar to like a boost or a DRS thing, which I'll let Lachlan cover next.
Gee, thanks for that.
But, these 2 modes they're designed to make cars able to follow each other a little bit more closely down the straights. The cars will generate less downforce. Hopefully they can, down the straights especially. And with this extra power boost from the engine, hopefully there'll be some good overtaking. Yeah, so there is some aero differences. It will be interesting to see if these rules get tweaked a bit throughout the season because, it's all a bit of an unknown at the moment. Teams are testing these things in simulators and so on, but until we get out there and actually start racing around on track and drivers start to being able to provide feedback from a real racetrack environment, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Because the FIA's done their own CADs and design work and, I guess, projections or whatever to what they think it's going to work out like, but they don't probably have the benefit of real world testing like the teams do to go, well, hang on, this is how the rubber hits the road.
No, I mean, look, and these
in actuality,
all these technical regulations they've been agreed to with the teams in principle, and the teams would have done some simulation testing. FIA's got their own testing that they do. So they're trying to work with the teams to make sure everyone's going to be happy with what happens and what they roll out. So yeah, it's a big change. It's a big change. And when cars are driving around a track now, it's pretty easy to indicate when someone's in DRS on the TV. If you're looking at the timing board, there can be a little light that flashes up. But the viewers want to know when a driver is using X mode or Z mode, or when this new power boost that we'll talk about in a second is coming on. There are going to be challenges to try and explain that and convey that information during a race so the viewers know who's got an edge, who's going to make a move here. Maybe someone's saving battery power, maybe someone's not. So there's a lot to consider from the actual racing point of view and how they broadcast this as well.
Yeah, I think for Sky, in regards to working out the graphics that go around this, I mean, we see some of the AI where it follows the car around and puts the driver's initials up the top and, boxes the car. Maybe that box will change or something based on the feed. It'll be interesting to see how they do handle it. And while I joke about the gamification of it, the geek in me is actually pretty excited about this. The fact that we've got movable front and rear wings, what will be interesting for me is as to whether or not the teams can actually do some tweaking to the electronics or the settings while the car is driving.
Well, and not only that, like even if they have to choose a level of downforce for X mode and a level which will be minimal and a level of downforce for their Z mode, they've got 2 different car configurations that's running throughout the whole lap. So some teams might go for a low downforce option or a high downforce, low downforce option. So there's going to be a bit of strategy and variation there as well. So it could open up some more interesting racing, we'll have to say.
Is the wing movement going to be similar to DRS? Like DRS, when the wings open, it's obvious. You can see it just flattens out. Will it be similar amounts of movement? Do we know?
Yeah, it'll be quite similar, but in the rear wing now there's 2 elements instead of 1, but they will lift up. You'll be able to see it. Same with the front wing. And then when you get to a corner, you can either deactivate it, or if you hit the brake, the elements will flip back down to high downforce mode. But it should be obvious when you're watching it. Yeah.
But then is that going to come in the same way as DRS, that when they flick that, it's only in certain spots as well? Like, will it only be on the straights or an overtaking thing? Like, it's not going to be available in corners or anything like that?
I believe there might be restrictions at some parts of tracks, but I'm not too sure. So, I mean, if they can use a low downforce mode everywhere, they won't anyway, because the cars are so powerful and there's so much of a benefit to having extra downforce when you're cornering in a Formula One car that they'd want to be running Z mode, because they'll just go faster around the track through corners. It'll just be, I think, when they get on the straights where you don't need that downforce anymore. You've got enough mechanical grip. Open up X mode, away you go.
To Happy's point, and this is where, as you were saying, is that as soon as you apply the brake, all of a sudden it will turn off X mode. So for Franco Colapinto, that will be a good thing. So he's not flying into a corner.
Yeah.
And forgets to turn off the DR.
I believe that's the idea, because you don't want to be hurtling into a corner at potentially 400 k's an hour. Yeah, not have the wings pop down.
To be fair, Jack did it, tried it once, and he discovered that it doesn't work very well.
You only need to do it once.
So this is quite beneficial for tracks where there's a mix of high and low downforce sort of setups. Like, instead of having a setup for the whole, I've got to pick our best setup for the track, we can just go, well, we can sort of be somewhere in the middle and get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and opening up X mode, if there's certain points where you can enable that on the track, some teams might choose to open it up as early as possible, others not, depending on their racing lines around corners and things. So, yeah, I think there'll be a little bit more strategy from like an engineering perspective, from the engineers building the setup for a weekend and deciding on a race strategy, how much downforce they need in corners, how to look after tyres, that sort of thing. That'll be a real twist for them.
Steep learning curve for the drivers too.
A little bit, but they would have done hundreds and hundreds of laps in simulators with this to get ready for it. And they'll have, 4 full days, I think it is, of testing at the start of the year, and they'll probably be running 150 laps a day each, assuming their cars don't break down. So they should be pretty used to it by the time they get to Melbourne.
And I think this is where the sly foxes like Fernando will use this to their advantage. I think this is going to be something where they'll be able to get a lot out of these modes.
Yeah, I was reading or watching something, and they said, this could actually really work well for Hulkenberg, Alonso, even Hamilton, because they've been in that system for so long. They've actually driven the previous example of cars that didn't have this, complete suck to the ground thing that we're used to. So
I think
we'll see. Time will tell.
That leads in well to a discussion about power unit changes, because this extra power boost is something that can be deployed anywhere around a lap if you're within 1 second. So maybe you can explain to us, Locke, what's happening with power units.
Well, I don't know that I can, but I'm going to do the very best that I can. Okay, so let's just.
We have faith in you. Let's go.
So they are going to continue with the existing V6 internal combustion engine that they've got, but the power is going to reduce from about 550-ish down to 400 kilowatts out of that one. And they are also going to then put cap costs on the engine. So the original current setup's about 95 million. They're allowed to now spend $130 million on it.
I like that's a cost cap. So they're cost capping it and increasing it.
But it's just a 30% increase on what your cost cap is. So it's fine. So, so we've got multiple manufacturers now coming in as well. So Audi's coming into it, obviously. Ford's going to then start supplying Red Bull and joint venture with that. Honda is, we originally thought they were stepping away, but they're actually still running for Aston Martin on that one as well. And obviously we've got Mercedes and Ferrari running as well. Originally, it used to be 80% of ICE engine, internal combustion engine, and 20% electric. Now they're trying to almost make it parity, about 50-50 each. Might be a couple of percent either way, but the idea is to bring that a lot closer together so that they're running almost identical in terms of that. And then we move on from the engine to the electrical component of the motors for that side of it. That's actually had probably the most significant increase. So originally it was about 120 kilowatts from the electric motors. That's gone to 350 kilowatts. So where you've lost the power out of the ICE engine, or they've reduced that, they've actually increased that on the electric side of it. But then you actually get still roughly a total horsepower output around about 1,000 horsepower from the engine, from both of those combined. Then you have kinetic energy harvested on the braking system. That has actually been doubled. So what they used to harvest, they're now actually going to increase that to about 8.5 millijoules per lap. But in order from that to then, I think, Nathan, you were saying, we were talking before in relation to trying to make it a better or easier for the engine manufacturers to come in, they've actually taken away the exhaust recovery or the exhaust energy recovery, because if you've got new manufacturers like Audi and Ford coming in, they're years behind what the other manufacturers have had to actually gain from that technology. So that's now taken out, and their focus is more on the kinetic energy reboost from that one.
Yeah, I think the main goal, I think, was to make the engines a bit more relevant. So getting rid of the exhaust recovery unit was part of that. And then with the increase in electrical power and the recovery side of things, changed the engine quite a lot. So I think it was trying to make it so that the existing manufacturers didn't have some sort of leg up with experience with a similar engine. So everyone's starting with like a new engine, which probably explains the increase in the cost cap as well, because I think development of this for all the teams, engine manufacturers, is going to be pretty high for the first year or two at least.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously in sustainability, we're moving towards 100% from sustainability to that. So the idea is to also then reduce the fuel by about 30%, the actual fuel usage overall, obviously harvesting the electrical energy side of that. You can then use that to saving against the fuel side of it as well.
You had a dumb question, Dan?
Will the engine be noisier or quieter?
Not that I've heard.
That's a good question.
Pun intended.
We're not sure.
Well, from a fan's point of view, when I know there was a brief chat about going back to the V10s and loud engines and rumble. Clearly that's not happening, but just curiosity whether
it's not going to be any louder.
What the atmosphere will be like as a fan.
Definitely won't be louder, but I think because of the fact if they're using more of the electric engines, technically it might be almost quieter, because they'll be using that as the boost to get out of corners and things like that. So you won't necessarily have that same high pitch to come out of it. Down the straight, it'll still be roaring though, because of the fact that they'll be having everything switched up to 100% from that. So
hopefully it's still noisy. Yeah, the noise adds so much to the spectacle.
What the question for me here is, and as you talk about we're now tripling the size of the battery, but we're only doubling the energy harvesting. It'll be around that battery engine management and braking management that the drivers will have to do, because the MGUH, which is the exhaust recovery, is eliminated. So that's part of the energy recovery that's gone. So it's going to be interesting to see how the drivers are going to manage that in regards to harvesting energy and getting the battery up to full capacity.
I think originally the drivers were concerned that they'd have to be downshifting on the straight or something like that in order to harvest the extra energy. But apparently, since they've gone on to further testing and that, they won't need to actually do extra braking or anything like that. The system that's in place will actually harvest energy either more efficiently or faster, whatever it's going to be. But at the same side too, because of the way, obviously, they're trying to head towards a net zero type thing for this, batteries that they're using in this are mandated at end of life that they have to be recycled, especially the cobalt part of it as well. And then because we've got the battery power in there as well and DRS is gone, that manual override comes into it as well. So I think what you're going to find is, and like you were discussing before, Nathan, the coming out of corners will be who's game enough to stick it on 100% and boot it out. And also because the cars are riding higher, there'll be less fear about hitting the ripple strips because you're not going to damage the floor of the car or anything like that, because it is riding higher. So you might find that people are going to flirt with different lines to attack the corners, because they don't have to necessarily stick to the existing racing lines, because there'll be no floor damage from that.
But I'm managing the decreased mechanical grip from the smaller tyres.
And that's the tricky part, that they've got to figure that out. But you don't have to necessarily stick to the existing racing line, because your floor, you can jump over the ripple strips a bit more. Obviously, you've got to keep two of the tyres on the track, but you can take a slightly different, wider or thinner line to actually get through the corner.
So for our listeners, just to clarify that, in case we just didn't get that little bit clear, is that with the battery, if a driver is within 1 second of the competitor anywhere around the track, so it's not the current rules where you've got to wait for the DRS zone, you've got to be within a second, and then only then you can employ DRS. Anywhere around the track, you can do the manual override, which kicks in the added energy from the battery.
Yeah.
Which 350 kilowatts.
350 kilowatts, which potentially can rocket that thing past 340 odd kilometres an hour. And there is rumours going around that the cars may hit 400 kilometres an hour on the longer straights on the track if there can be rocketed out of the corner correctly. So you will see some cars zipping past, I think is the word to use.
So I think the way they're implementing this though is that, like, normally if you're not using the extra boost mode, the MGUK, the battery power, will start tapering off between 290 up to about 350 k's an hour. So it's like the top speed down the straight. But if you're using the override, you'll get the full 350 kilowatt deployment right up to the top of that range, like 355 or so. And if you're using the power boost, I think the drivers get an extra energy allocation of like another half a megajoule of energy per lap or something. I've read somewhere as well. So there is a gain to be doing it. But like Christian said, you've got to manage that. There's some strategy around it, and you can use it in multiple places around a circuit. It's not just in like a specific DRS zone. So yeah, hopefully that gives us some good strategy in overtaking.
And in theory, over the length of a race, everyone's going to have the same amount of battery power to deploy at chosen times.
At the starting point, yeah, but if someone behind you is deploying battery and you're saving it, then you can deploy to get away from them on the next lap. So it'll be a bit of cat and mouse, yeah.
But now that's all the positives. The downside is, because we've got 3 motors and a battery and all that, that's going to increase the weight of these things by about 34 kilos. So all those savings you boys just had before, I've just had a Big Mac for lunch and chucked it all back on there again. So
yes, batteries are heavy. Yes, we know that.
Yeah, they are.
And this will be the challenge for the teams around how they're getting weight out of the car, because now that the minimum weight has been reduced, they're going to all be targeting that. My challenge is, will we see the teams actually meeting that minimum weight? And I'd be surprised if they're going to be hitting that minimum weight by the start of the season.
Yeah, it might be a challenge, and especially given that there's more safety enhancements they need to add to the cars this year as well. So that will probably add some weight, because if you want extra safety and rigidity in the chassis, you need to add extra material to it. So there'll be a change there as well.
I think you'll find the first 6 months they'll start reducing it after that, but it'll be, let's make sure the car is going to make the races and finish it first before we focus on reducing it by 100 grams here and 100 grams there. It'll be that more consistency out of it first.
I know there was some concern and some chat early on about drivers being pressured to lose a lot of weight to help with the car weight reduction, but they were talking about setting a minimum weight for the drivers as well, so they didn't have to go below a certain weight, just to make sure that no one.
They're not exactly my build as it is in these drivers anyway, so there's not a lot they can lose.
You got some tall units.
Yeah, there's some guys who are at least 6 foot tall, and they're going to be carrying just more weight naturally in their frame. So yeah, I don't know. Well,
the thing is, if they're too skinny, they'll potentially pass out during the race though. Like, because if you go to Singapore, you lose 5 kilos racing at Singapore.
Yeah,
you don't want to be underweight before you.
No.
George can just leave it off after Singapore.
Yeah.
Sorry, Yuki's high-fiving the FIA. He's going, I'm the shortest on the grid.
Number one driver pick, the short guy.
But no, as you said, Happy, there is some safety changes that they're also looking to implement a new 2-stage nose design, and this is to prevent detachment issues in crashes, increasing the rigidity on the side intrusions so that there's more safety there. And of course, given the fact that the driver is so close to the power unit, is some more protection around the driver and the fuel cell as well.
Yep.
So there's a lot happening.
Also, stronger roll hoops. So I think the load resistance was 16 Gs initially, and now they're increasing that to 20 Gs they have to protect the driver from of impact. So some more structural work has to go into that. So that all usually adds weight, to make something stiffer or stronger, you've got to add more material. So yeah, big challenge for the teams.
That move to 20 Gs, is that product of the cars being able to go faster?
I would think it's just an increased level of safety, because they'll see accidents during the year. If a tire hits a roll hoop or something happens, they'll analyze that and see how the roll hoop worked. Did it provide enough protection for that given impact? But they're always trying to make it safer. So all of this is incremental sort of stuff. If you've got the chance to make it safer, and the FIA has a safety program, road safety, this is a big thing for them. So. And it should be, we should be trying to protect drivers' lives, so no one's going to be complaining if they want to boost the safety on some of these things.
Another dumb question about the battery. The flammability of the batteries, is that of concern?
Look, new battery, if you look at new battery technology now, you can actually poke nails through them because they've taken out other components in most of them that used to explode and things like that. So if they're using the latest technology in batteries, you would have to, the fuel cell would explode then before the battery would explode.
It's
in the new model of cars.
Interesting question, Dan. Like, yeah, I would hope not. I would hope, like Lachlan said, some of the newer technologies are a lot safer, but we've been lucky that there's been very few accidents in the past, 5-6 years where there hasn't been any sort of fire or anything, any sort of combustion like that from an impact. So the cars look pretty safe when they have an accident at the moment, but I don't know if one of those things got punctured and.
Generally, if you look at the cars, that driver's shell or the chassis that they're sitting in, that has the most protection around it. All the other parts are designed to,
That's
fall off,
extremely
collapse
strong.
into things like that. But the monocoque shot hole that they're in, that is pretty solid and structural
Remember
safe.
Romain Grosjean when he went through that barricade and had that massive impact? Like that whole monocoque went straight. It pierced and went through the metal armco and was intact. He was able to climb out of it. It was incredible. So they're very, very strong, but I don't know.
Just in reference to, because not some of ours, but there's been some EVs and some of it's, dodgy media about, EVs exploding and catching fire and not being able to be put out at a retail level.
That's when they hit thermal mass. That's a bit different too.
Yeah, clearly it's a different level of safety, but still, anyway.
Yeah, I have never heard it been brought up as a concern, so I guess it's not.
But when we talk about safety, and this is where it is that protection of the driver, and so, to your point, Dan, there's a lot of electricity going to be around them as well now. So, it's about that. Tuppy's point, when you see Roman who's gone through the Armco, you only have to look at the crash from Joe Guanyu at Silverstone in 2022, and if people haven't seen that, I'd suggest jump on YouTube and search it up. You'll see again what the halo or the roll hoop does in regards to that protection, because that was a barrel roll crash over the Armco into past the tyre barrier. So from that regards, you want to make sure that they're okay. We've been able to wrap up the regulation changes for 2026.
Have we covered it all? Are we sure we've covered it all?
I was going to say, is there anything that we've missed?
Do we sign that off with, well, that was the conclusion of the Idiot's Guide too, or we're okay with that?
No, I think we've covered it off. I think we hopefully explained everything to everyone. Good luck, Crofty, come testing in Formula One next year.
I can see Ted down in the garage trying to show the change in the
wings.
We're
going to need some diagrams and all
Let's
this.
just clarify. I was okay with it. Dan, how did you go with that coverage today? Were we all right with that?
Look, that's all dummied down for me nicely. I will say one thing. I am actually this year or next year looking forward to seeing how the cars roll out, in whether they do a big group thing again or whether it's all individual.
The launch,
a launch. It'll be really interesting to see how the different teams interpret the regs and how they make their cars look to work with that initially.
Me too.
Yep, should be interesting. And again, new everything. We're bound to have some challenges and some issues for the teams. So it's going to make it for a very interesting start to the season. So with that, as we were saying, summer break is almost over. I can smell the fuel. It's getting closer.
This weekend.
Thank God we've got some racing coming up.
I don't have to talk to my family anymore.
I have to say, my wife listened to our last podcast, and we actually had a very deep and involved conversation around Formula One and what the FIA is trying to do in regards to reducing its carbon footprint. So that was an interesting dinner time conversation.
So that's a nice way to send her to sleep at night time, Christian.
That and FlowViz.
With summer break being almost over, our next episode will be the preview of the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. So very excited about that. Always promises to be an exciting race. We'll be covering that off later this week. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and we will see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of the Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.